Hi, this is John Linneball, and this is AP US History Video 40, The Market Revolution Leads to National Unification and Economic and Regional Specialization. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you don't like ads, try my site at testpreparation.locals.com. The development of a national economy. One of the strongest ways to link people is economically. And as stated previously, the Northeast and the Old Northwest, for example, Chicago, Indiana, stuff like that, had commerce and manufacturing, mostly caused by the split with the British, Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Embargo Act of 1807, etc. So, since trade with Britain was not very stable, it made it very important for things to be produced domestically within the United States. So they had things like the Waltham-Lowell system, where other industries imitated the Lowell and Waltham textile mills and formed towns where they provided work and homes for industrial workers. You can note how many products are made under similar arrangements in China today, but without as nice conditions. The South had King Cotton, which was fueled by British and U.S. demand for cotton. New York City ports, Massachusetts mills, etc., also benefited from the cotton trade since mills needed cotton to make textiles, cloth, and of course, ports like New York City needed something to export and import, so they're going to import things from other countries and they're going to export things like cotton. Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin and interchangeable parts helped fuel this growth, and you can see that in previous videos. The market economy changed class, family, and gender relations. And we can see here a little bit about the Waltham-Lowell system. Basically, the Waltham-Lowell model showed that these mills were owned by a joint stock corporation rather than families and partnerships, so it's corporate America rising. And they were financed largely through capitalization, again, kind of like today. And workers in Waltham were paid in wages rather than goods and clothing, so again, much more like today than previous things. But the system did prove too expensive to sustain, but did have things. Kirk Boot was the first agent for the Merrimack Manufacturing Company mill in Lowell, and he did actually, obviously he was kind of a dictator, but he also guided the town's planning and beautification program, so they actually wanted to provide a nice environment, as I've already gone over in previous videos. Migration and community formation. Market revolution was something that caused a new settlement pattern in the United States. It encouraged foreigners to move to the United States, as well as U.S. citizens to move within the country. So, native born U.S. citizens moved west for farming, ranching, mining, etc. The idea is they could get land in the west as it opened up, or they could go and try to strike it rich mining for gold or other minerals. Immigrants took jobs in the burgeoning manufacturing industry, which was growing mostly in the cities back east where immigrants would be likely to land after coming from Europe. Most immigrants came from Ireland and what is now Germany. They were called the German states back then because they were independent states rather than one unified Germany back in those days. Migration from Europe, Irish immigration. Irish immigration. Well, first, the Irish potato famine was the result of a crop disease that killed potatoes the Irish ate to survive, mostly because the British landlords, etc., took most of the food that was grown in Ireland for themselves. The potato blight killed the potatoes more effectively because the potatoes were grown on bad land that wasn't used for growing British crops. Thus, the British were at least partially responsible for the starvation deaths of 1 million Irish, roughly 1/8 of Ireland's population from 1845 to 1850. Ireland was a net exporter of food. This was, if not completely preventable, mostly preventable. It is what it is. And that's an effect of laissez-faire capitalism, absentee agricultural landlords, etc., that made this systemic failure possible. So according to Wikipedia, and I'll have the link in the description, one historian calculated that between 1801 and 1845 there had been 114 commissions and 61 special committees inquiring into the state of Ireland, and that without exception their findings prophesied disaster. Ireland was on the verge of starvation, her population rapidly increasing, 3/4 of her laborers unemployed, housing conditions appalling, and the standard of living unbelievably low. And we can see here the Great Famine. Here's a marker. It is accepted tradition that Anne Murphy from This Townland of Sheskin was the first person in County Mangahan to identify the fungus, and I can't read that, or potato blight for what it was in 1845. So they did identify the fungus that caused the potato blight, but a little too late. So you can also look at Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, an essay from 1729, so considerably before the potato blight, really more than 100 years, proposing the cooking of Irish babies, the idea that the cooking and eating of Irish babies was just about as humane as British treatment of the Irish. And you can certainly look that up on Wikipedia, A Modest Proposal, and here's a little cartoon detailing it. Could have gotten that in better detail, but oh well. 2 million more Irish left Ireland. 1 million came to the United States, and the other million went to other countries. 4/5 of the million that did come to the United States settled in New York City, Boston, and other cities and towns in the Northeast. They were poor and unlikely to have means to move far once they got to the United States. The second largest group of immigrants during that time period, during the antebellum period from roughly 1800 to the 1840s or so, 1850, was the group of Germans. Again, people from the German states that would later become a unified Germany. Germans were the second largest group, as I just said, and German immigrants were generally wealthier than Irish immigrants, so they could move inland from New York City or whatever eastern port city at which they arrived. Many skilled craftsmen came after an unsuccessful 1848 revolution in the German states. Political persecution of these people who had been involved or even were just near it made staying there a bad idea. Certainly if you attempted a revolution against the government and they let you live, you might say, now is a good time to leave this country. Many Germans moved to, in quotes, the German Triangle of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, St. Louis, Missouri, and Cincinnati, Ohio. There's a reason that Milwaukee is a huge brewing city. We're gonna make our dreams come true, doing it our way. Welcome to the club. Another big brewing city is Utica, New York, where Utica Club is made. So they have these cartoon characters, Schultz and Dooley. So the Irish and Germans were obviously the big consumers of the original Utica Club beer in Utica, New York, and today you can still buy these beer steins and you can buy Utica Club, etc., and Saranac and many other things. So all I can say is if you ever go to Utica, all right. Migration to the West. The West grew quickly in the antebellum United States, especially after the War of 1812. Improvements in transportation, canals, roads, later railroads, made it easier to move west and everywhere else in the country. So they did have people who crossed the Appalachian Mountains. Over 4 million crossed the Appalachian Mountains to go west between 1800 and 1840. And thus places like the West North Central, what would become those states of North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Nebraska, etc., and the East North Central, especially during that time period, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, were settled. Migrants moved in groups to create new communities. Obviously, it's a lot better to have a large group of people if you're going to actually have to build a town. You're going to have to clear land, build the buildings, and actually have a community living there. That's really hard to do by yourself or just with your family. You're probably going to need a great number of people to actually make that work. Southerners from the original Southern colonies, which became the original Southern states, moved to Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Texas. The joke about Texas is a southern state that thinks it's a western state. And there is actually a town called West Wego, Louisiana. I am not making that up. So you can tell who founded that. There were people who were going west. The migration to the west also caused regional specialization in the new western areas that had been opened up. So the upper southerners, so the northern part of the original southern states, moved to places like southern Ohio, southern Indiana, and southern Illinois. I've heard people from Ohio joke about that, say, well, there are two Ohios. There's Ohio, northern Ohio, and then there's Ohio, which is southern Ohio. And definitely speak to people who are from northern Ohio around Cleveland. That's the Great Lakes accent. I'm very familiar with that. And then if you go to southern Ohio, that's a very different southern accent. Northerners moved to northern Ohio. like Cleveland, Indiana, and Illinois, like Chicago, Michigan, think Detroit, Wisconsin. Well, okay, anywhere in Wisconsin. And while some settlers legally obtained title to their land through either buying it from the government or private land agents who actually owned the land, other people just obtained land by squatting. I mean, there's great big open areas where they could just move in, settle on the land with no legal title, and if you're there long enough, generally even the courts will accept that it's your land if you're there openly long enough. Say, well, you should have done something about it. Some jurisdictions call that adverse possession. If you live somewhere long enough and it's open, notorious, and hostile to whoever's claim of ownership, the claim of ownership of the person who actually has legal title, too bad, so sad for the title owner, it becomes your property. I don't have a valid bar license in any state. If you need legal advice on something like this, please speak to a property lawyer rather than trying to get legal advice by listening to this video. But anyway, that is the way that some people got their land, is by squatting, and that's even happened in modern cities today. Some people will squat in places that are abandoned or vacant. But let's get back to the antebellum United States between 1800 and 1850. The northern Midwest looked a lot like New England because people from New England moved there, so they built buildings that looked like the buildings in New England. And the New South looked a lot like the Old South because they built southern buildings and they wanted to do the same kind of things that they did in the Old South, which is have plantations and slavery, etc. The northern U.S. was mostly involved in manufacturing and trade, like New York City, Chicago, etc. So you can see the railroads made that a lot easier. Of course, the Great Lakes were great places to ship things across, and once the Erie Canal was built, you could take things from the Great Lakes to New York City. So it all worked out. The South, King Cotton. Cotton was king in the South. As we've said before, Southern cotton production really peaked in the antebellum period because there was extremely high demand for cotton for cloth and thread, etc., both domestically, that is within the United States, because what were textile mills in New England going to weave into cloth if they didn't have cotton, and abroad. Foreign countries definitely wanted cotton that was grown in the South, so basically the South could sell just about as much cotton as it could produce. King cotton also affected the North, so you can't just say, oh, well, that was just the South. No. I mean, or if you're trying to assign blame for slavery, etc., well, New York City was a major shipping and trading point for cotton and textiles, and New England textile mills produced cloth from southern cotton, so everybody had a share in it, everybody's responsible for it, everybody profited from it, etc. So King Cotton really changed things in the United States, and it really peaked during the antebellum period. Did you find this video useful? Well, if you did, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Neither action costs you anything. You'll be alerted about my new videos. Why should you do it? I'm glad you asked. It's simple. YouTube will not share any ad revenue with me until I have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of view time within a year. So if you saw an ad during this, and you probably did, I didn't get any of the money from that. While many people are watching these, I don't have 4,000 hours of watch time. I'm getting close, but I don't have 1,000 subscribers at the time of recording this. And ad money will help me make more videos. If you saw an ad during this video, as I just said, again, I'm not getting any of the money, so I'm just asking you to help me get my fair share since I'm making the content here. And for the same reasons, you're not only welcome but encouraged to share links to this video, put it in playlists, etc. I will gladly read and respond to constructive criticism or suggestions for new videos. If you say, hey John, why don't you make a video about this? I'll think about it. And if you say, hey John, I don't know, I didn't like the sound quality or something like that, please let me know. And I reserve the right to delete comments such as troll posts or spam. I don't want to use my comment section to advertise whatever spam products you have. And I'm not interested in trollers. You can, however, hire me for tutoring. So if you want to hire me for tutoring, you can always give me a call at 415-623-4251, and we can arrange either online or in-person tutoring. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to give you my contact information next. Facebook. You can reach me at facebook.com/Linnebaugh Tutoring. Instagram, instagram.com/john.linneball.tutoring. and 415-623-4251. You can reach me at john@johnlinnebaugh.com. My website is www.johnlinnebaugtutoring.com or johnlinnebaugh.com. And testpreparation.locals.com is another site where you can see these videos. And you can also see it at lbry.tv, John Linnebaugh Tutoring. And if you need to contact me by mail, I'm at John Linnebaugh Tutoring, 1859 Powell Street, number 109, San Francisco, California, 94133. And one last thing, and we're done. Please, please, please know this is not a substitute for your classes, text, etc. This video is based on Barron's AP United States History Review Book, the 5th edition, any other sources listed in the video description, and my general knowledge of U.S. history. While this should help you do well on the AP US History exam, I cannot be responsible for what your teacher thinks is important and asks you about on his or her own tests, homework, etc. Please read your class texts and pay attention to what your teacher says in class. And with that, I'm out of here. I hope you have a good day, night, evening, whatever it is.